stop trying to push through, right? Because it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better, right? Because it's time to look at the problem differently. Like, you've got to look somewhere else. There's got to be a different place to look. And if you are a normal human, thinking, breathing, walking about the world, successful in your business, it is entirely possible that the answer does not lie inside your brain. Because if you knew the answer, you'd do it already. Like, quite honestly, you just would. Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tonya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how. More revenue is supposed to solve problems, right? Like, isn't that the whole point of a business? Like, the difference between a business and a hobby is whether you solve the problem or like whether you're making money or not making money. So that's what we're working toward, right? We want more clients. We want more sales. Some of us want more growth. Some of us are perfectly happy to maintain. But why does it so often feel like the opposite happens? Why does the business start to feel tighter and more constricted, heavier, more complicated, right when things are technically going really, really well? If you've ever looked at your numbers like I've been doing recently and thought, okay, making more money here, why do we feel worse? This episode isn't just for you. It is going to give you a completely different way to understand what's actually happening. Because what we found, and what I definitely know working with Gwen, is that more revenue often does not fix what is off in your business. Instead, what it does is it reveals it. So, Gwen, I want to start with the obvious assumption. We talk about it a lot here, but again, it's like it's an off example or whatever. It's not something that we've actually really anchored an episode in, which is that the assumption is that if something isn't working, more revenue will always fix it, or at least give you the resources you need to fix it, right? It'll give you the flexibility, gives you more margin, gives you the capacity to hire more people even. But why is it that so often the growth makes things feel worse instead of better?
So the reason, of course, is thousandfold. There can be all sorts of reasons why that is true. At some point, one of the reasons is because you need to bring other people on to support you, because we all only have so many hours in a day. No matter how efficient, no matter how effective we are, there's the whole, well, I don't trade time for money. We are always trading time for money. We may be making really good use of that time,
Right.
but people aren't just magically sending money to you. It is for something, and delivering that something, whether it's a physical product or a service or whatever, there's still some time that goes that's associated with that. It may not be ongoing time, or it may be only a tiny bit of ongoing time, but to prepare it took time. I mean, there's always issues around that. And of course, nothing ever works perfectly. Let's just be honest. We'd love that if that was the case. But, things break, things happen. So there's a point where we have to bring on people. That's one of the reasons. Okay. And people cost money. People usually won't work for free, and they probably shouldn't in your business for lots of other reasons. That's a whole different episode. So that's one reason. The other is when we start getting more money, we also get freer in spending it.
Okay.
Right? It's one of those things that when you're only making, let's say, $50,000 a year in your business, you get really conscientious about how much you're spending for various things. And when all of a sudden you've got $500,000 in your business, So when you've got $500,000 in your business, all of a sudden, instead, you're like, oh, well, this only costs $1,000. It's not that big of a deal. Where $1,000 when you had $50,000 in your business was a much bigger deal,
Yeah.
right? So we start spending money more freely. Not that it's necessarily wrong. We may be spending it on the right things, but
Right.
what was once a small amount becomes just almost a non-existent amount, and what became a big amount becomes a small amount. And so the things that were problematic when we were smaller actually still become problematic when we're bigger.
Right.
It's just bigger numbers, right? So, like, if we're not being super, super aware and conscious of what we're doing, that becomes an issue. And then, of course, the third thing we've talked about, but I don't think we've really focused on ever, is the difference between growing versus scaling, right?
Mm.
Because
Oh,
growing,
yeah, we have an episode on that. Growth
yeah, I
versus
was gonna say,
scale.
I think it was quite some
Yeah.
time ago, though, so it'll be one you'll need to,
Long,
like,
long time ago, yeah.
dig up and link to, right? But growing means that we're making more, we're getting bigger,
Mhm.
but often that means the costs and expenses and things that go along with it are also getting bigger.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that we're making more money at the end, at the bottom line profit
Mhm.
base, right? As opposed to scaling.
Mhm.
And then the other is the problems we have at $50,000 business is different than the problems we have at a $500,000 business,
Mhm.
right? There are more people than I'd love to to mention who have gone from a $50,000 business to a $500,000 business to a $5 million business that
Mhm.
says, I would give anything to have the problems that I had when I was X size smaller. That's for two reasons. One is smaller business, smaller problems. But the other is they've now solved those problems, so those feel like easy problems to solve,
Ah.
right? Um, People often want to say, "Oh, it's, bigger business, bigger problems." Like, no, part of it is those aren't problems you're having to solve anymore. You know how to solve those
Mhm.
problems. You'd love to have those problems because you know the answer. You know what to do.
Right.
These are new problems. I don't know how to address them.
Got it. So, what I'm hearing is that growth is more of an amplifier than a solution. That, especially growth when it comes to money, but I would say growth in people too. But we're talking about money in this episode.
Yeah, but growth
Is
generally is an amplifier. I think that's a great accurate statement.
so, your the inefficiencies that exist when you're making $50,000 a year, like the fact that you like to be a little loosey goosey with whatever your available income is, are just going to scale when the revenue comes in, right? You're still going to be loosey goosey. If you're doing mental bookkeeping at 50,000, you're probably going to still be doing your mental bookkeeping at 100,000, but it's no longer going to work because it's a lot harder to keep 100,000 in your head than it is to keep 50. And to your point just now, in some cases, what you could tolerate at, say, 300K a year is like painful to the point of being a deal breaker at 1 million, just like some of the problems you have at 1 million that, the ones that you had at 300K that were deal breakers are like not even a blip on your radar at 1 million. So the growth in and of itself doesn't create problems. It just makes those existing ones really hard to ignore.
And sometimes it will create new problems,
Right.
right?
Especially hitting those additional thresholds, like you were saying.
Right. Yeah. Certain thresholds will create new problems as well. But if you don't really solve the problems, what you're saying about the amplifying, they just get amplified at the next level.
Okay. So let's actually briefly go down both roads.
Okay.
Because, I have heard people say for years, $5 million a year businesses don't have the same problem as 100, as $1 million businesses, which don't have the same problems as $250,000 businesses. Maybe just briefly explain to us what are the new problems that you encounter as you go up in those revenue thresholds?
So if we start at what I'm going to call a lowest threshold, like just barely six figures or just under six figures,
Mm-hmm.
one of the statements that we've talked about before is people say, well, I don't really have systems. Well, you always have systems. But what you don't have is consistent, documented out of your head systems.
Right. Everything's still in your head to some degree.
Everything's in your head. You may or may not be consistent about it, depending on your personality type. And it's probably not written down because it doesn't really need to be written down.
Right.
And you may be making a lot of on the fly judgments and choices about things because there is practically no issue with that.
Yeah.
Okay. As you start moving into like a 250K range, 250 to 500K, kind of in that range, that doesn't work anymore because it's actually adding so much complexity to your business that it's slowing you down instead of making you faster. Even if you're still only you, even if you haven't brought anybody else on, but you're now paying a penalty, a mental and energy penalty for having to make those decisions and processes and think through them time and time again. Okay.
Right. It's the tax switching, the context switching.
It's the context switching. Yeah, exactly. It's all of those things. But also likely at that level, you've started bringing other people into your business as well, which means they're not in your head. And, and so those things need to get out of your head. And so sometimes they're out somewhat, but not completely.
Right.
You still are a resource for a lot of the things that are going on. And you're still the answer person.
Yeah.
For a lot of the things that are going on. As you start moving past the 500K toward the 1 million, 2 million, it kind of depends on, business models and all sorts of things. But generally we're looking at that real upper six figure, early seven figure stage. Almost never, not never, but almost never, you're going to have people come in, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to need to start being able to make choices and decisions without you. But this is often where the issue really starts showing up of you don't know how much you actually know and haven't communicated out. Right? And so you don't think that you're the bottleneck, but you're still the bottleneck because lots of things are still coming by you and through you and around you. Right? And at that point, you're usually dealing with enough varied customers or clients that you can't keep it all in your head anymore. And or other people need to know the things that have been in your head historically so that the customers are actually feeling the level of support that you sold them at that stage, right? And so, and what typically happens in that late six, early seven figures is there are fundamental changes that need to happen to your business model,
right?
To be able to maintain that over time and or to grow it, because usually what around there will be where you will absolutely get stuck if you aren't making some fairly significant changes. As we move out of that 2 million and we start moving to the $5 to $10 million range, that's when you've got to have really serious structures in place. You've got to start thinking about being able to put layers in, which means you also need to be potentially hiring a few people that don't directly generate any revenue, which is a very painful thing.
Yeah.
That it's like, but I don't see how they're directly affecting revenue. Well, what they're doing is making sure that you have time to do the things that you need to do. And they're doing, it's not this direct piece. And so all of a sudden your overhead costs go up fairly drastically. And back to that usually means we've added quite a few people into the equation, back to our customers are bigger. And depending on what our business model is, and it almost doesn't matter what it is, but depending on what it is, we probably had to do some major overhauls of our infrastructure, whether it's physical location, whether it's our tech stack, there's quite a few changes that have probably had to go on in there. And at that point, that's the place where you'll start seeing that you've got a people problem because there's too much individual knowledge that's not shared enough in a
Right.
way that's accessible enough.
Yeah.
Even if you've got quite a few people and they're all good people, I'm not saying that you've got a bad people problem, but typically if you haven't been addressing it, there's not a good accountability structure. There's not a good communication structure. There's a lot of things that are missing at that level. Is that what
Yeah.
you were looking for?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful because, somebody who is listening to an episode, who clicks play on an episode called Why More Revenue is Making Your Business Feel Worse, could be at any of those thresholds. And so I think,
Yeah.
it's just really helpful to know, oh, okay, this is normal. If they see themselves in any of those problems, this is normal. But I always feel like it's nice to know, hey, this next level I hit, I'm going to get some problems there too. And this is what they're likely going to be so that I can either control for them now or at least be prepared when they start to arise.
Well,
So
yeah,
I want
because
to,
the reality of it is it was easy. Everyone would have $100 million businesses.
right?
You know, like if somehow it got
Mhm.
easier along the way, then it'd be like, oh, all you do is you get past this, and all of a sudden it's magic, and everyone becomes this other thing. That
Mhm.
I've never seen it for anybody in any industry ever.
Right. Right. And, so what I hear most often, though, going down the other path, is, the revenue is increasing, right? Like we had our best year ever. This was me actually like a year ago, best year ever, but I paid myself the least I've ever done, right?
Mhm.
Or I had to let people go. Like this wasn't my story, but I had to let people go, right? Because profits feel so much thinner. The cash flow feels less predictable. That was definitely my 2025. And somehow there's more pressure on me as a business owner than I think there should be given what my bookkeeping says I did last year. It's so counterintuitive.
Well, part of it is as the business gets bigger, you always have more mouths to feed. And when I say mouths to feed, I'm not necessarily saying employees or subcontractors.
Mhm.
Part of the mouths to feed are the vendors that you're using to support your business,
Right.
right? And part of the mouths to feed are the clients and customers that you have that is
Mhm.
creating the revenue,
Yeah.
right? And if you don't have more mouths to feed, that becomes a risk as well, right?
Mhm.
So let's just go down that because I think that's one that people lose track of. I've got 3 amazing clients and I make $100,000 a year. Okay,
Okay.
great. Basically, we're getting $33,000 out of each client a year, right?
Sweet.
Right? Awesome. That's great. I double my business, but I
Mhm.
still only have 4 clients.
Mhm.
Okay? So now I'm making $200,000 a year, but each client is now worth 50,000,
Mhm.
which feels good because it's like, "Oh, my client value is so much better." But when one decides to no longer work with you, that's a much bigger hole to fill,
Yeah.
right? So even if it's like, "No, I'm just increasing what my customer value is," that's
Mhm.
people will say, "Oh, that's the answer." It's like, "Well, yeah, but no." Because if we get too many eggs in one basket, if one
Mhm.
egg breaks, it has a much bigger impact on everything else really, really fast, right?
Mhm.
But at the same point, if it's like, "Oh, yeah, I doubled my business and I got 5 times as many clients," that's a different problem.
Mhm.
Not that it's back to not that
Mhm.
either one of these is good or bad or right or wrong,
Mhm.
but there's different pressures depending on where that more money is coming from. More mouths to feed.
So, something else that you've talked about, because I do think that there's the more mouths to feed, which I think speaks to revenue versus profitability versus efficiency.
Mhm.
So maybe you could explain. I'm trying to think of if you could maybe explain how you can actually be growing but becoming less efficient at the same time. And what I mean, because I think you did a great job of explaining sort of some of the risk factors that come with how
Right.
we double our revenue and things like that. But, what I'm talking about is back to the idea of revealing the issues that are already there.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that the clients I have oftentimes aren't paying attention to the true profit off of whatever they're selling.
Right. So the place where you start seeing, like you said, where it gets amplified is if the revenue is increasing,
Mhm.
is the profitable percentage staying the same or is it going
Mhm.
up or going down?
Right.
Okay. So, we'll just do simple math that I can do in my head. You've got a $100,000 business and you've got
Yeah.
$10,000 in profit. Okay. That's
Okay.
10%.
Mhm.
That's a nice, easy number. So that would mean if our profit percentage is staying the same, when we have a $200,000 business, we'd have $20,000 in profit.
Yeah.
Okay. 10%, easy math. So the one of those things is we're like, oh, but we made $15,000 in profit this year when it was a $200,000 business. That feels like a big increase because, well, it is. It's 50% increase.
Mhm.
Right? But we've actually reduced our percentage of profit,
Mhm.
which means our expenses went up, not in a direct line, okay,
Right.
percentage wise. And so if we keep doing that, the next year we may make $20,000, but we have a $400,000 business. Well, we've gone from a 10% profit down to a 5% profit in 2 years by multiplying our business twice to two
Mhm.
times. So we've 4x'd our business,
Yeah.
but we've actually we've dropped our profit percentage. And so often we look at the hard number and the number gets bigger. So we're like, win, we've
Yeah.
won. This is a win. It's like, no, it's not enough of a win, right? So that's actually telling us something about how the money is going out based on bringing in new clients, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes what we discover, we were talking about this in an episode, I don't know if it was the last episode, the one before that, but the cash flow becomes like a really big issue
Mhm.
because what we see when it's a small number, it's like, oh yeah, I can suck it up personally to not get
Mhm.
paid for 5 days, because the cash flow isn't quite there yet, but it's going to be there, and I know it's going to land, and I can handle it
Mhm.
until such point it's like, "Oh, wait, I'm not able to pay myself and I've got bills due," and it's going from 5 days to 15 days to 30 days to 60 days to 90
Mhm.
days,
Yeah.
right? That's one of those things that it will start amplifying because all of a sudden, yeah, I'm selling more and I'm fulfilling, but I'm not getting paid until way too late in the process. And so
Right.
right? And this can be back to as part of the growth. When I was the one doing the fulfillment, I was
Mhm.
also taking part of my pay from the profit temporarily,
Right.
right? And that was fine. I could do that for myself.
Right.
But when I'm actually hiring a subcontractor to do the
Mhm.
work, because I no longer have enough hours to be able
Mhm.
to serve as many clients as I'm able to sell to,
Mhm.
all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, no, that subcontractor expects to be paid whether I've been paid or not,
Right.
right? That bill comes due whether or not I've been paid.
Mhm.
And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, the money's gone. And I'm paying out money that I haven't actually earned yet,
Yeah.
right? So that's one where all of a sudden it'll amplify. At the smaller size, it doesn't show up, but as it starts getting bigger, all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, that's going to be a problem, right?
Mhm.
So cash flow can be one. The first one I was talking about really is expenses. That
Mhm.
that the expenses were small, but all of a sudden when we get a little bit bigger, our list gets bigger. We add one or two users to various accounts. Most of the time, that's not a linear thing, right? What ends up happening is it's like, oh, you go from this price to this price. You
Right.
jump, make this big jump. I can't just add a user. Sometimes you can, but a lot of times it's like you either have access to one user, you have access to 5 users, you have access to 15 users. Well, I
Mhm.
actually only need one more user, but I got to pay for 5. Now that
Right.
may stable out, but I have to grow to the point where that becomes okay, right? And
Yeah.
so are we using the best service that we need to be
Mhm.
using based on who we are, what our size is, all of those
Yeah.
things, right? So there's lots of things that can get amplified in the process, but we've got to be looking, are we comparing good numbers that actually compare?
Right.
Right? And that's why percentages often work really well, that we can see, you know. So,
Mhm.
good growth, good financial growth will show that the growth goes up and my expenses percentage-wise go down. Being
Mhm.
aware that there may be a point that it does this big jump, because usually it's not this nice little smooth line.
Right.
Usually all of a sudden it's like, "Boink."
Yep.
And it pops up. And so being aware of these things and saying, is that actually a problem? Am I
Mhm.
amplifying something that's been existing? Or is this just a blip
Right.
as part of the growth process?
Yeah.
Either could be true, right?
Right.
Either of these things could be true. It also, one of the things that I also see happen a lot as the
Mhm.
revenue goes up is we get comfortable that our revenue is up. And therefore, I should be able to afford fill in whatever blank you want.
Right. Back to amplifying whatever.
Right. Or I should be doing, if I'm a business at this level, I should be doing this kind of thing as opposed to that kind of thing.
Mhm.
This is one of those that was a long enough conversation. I can't tell you if it came up in a podcast or it was just one of our conversations way, way, way back when. But where people's like, well, I've got someone who's working really, really well for me, but they don't charge me enough. I need to go to somebody else who charges more,
Mhm.
right? Because I'm now a bigger business. There's no way that they could still be helping me.
Right. Yeah, I need to be in a $100,000 program, not a $50,000 program.
Right. Because Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's no way that this could possibly be true. That might be true, but it may not
Mhm.
be true, right? It could be
Right.
like, I just think I should be doing these things,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And that amplifies that problem of what I'm doing is I'm trying to meet some expectation
Mhm.
that isn't necessarily based on any sort of fact or reasoning behind it, right?
Right.
It's what I call a societal expectation.
Yeah, and I think, that example aside, like, what I'm hearing is that the pressure that they're feeling financially isn't so much because they need more revenue, which is why more revenue doesn't solve it. It's because their business isn't structured to support the level they're at or the level that they're, like, on the cusp of.
Right.
And I think, like, that realization is really important because I think it comes with when you wake up, or for me, it's in the middle of the night, right, when I can't sleep, where you're like, "Ugh, like, at this level, this should feel better. Like, I shouldn't have this kind of angst. I shouldn't be chewing on Tums or whatever else." Why do you think that feeling, like even when it's fleeting, maybe sometimes it just comes on the walk or on the drive or whatever, this should feel better than it does. What do you
It
feel like is actually happening in that moment?
It's often because we have assumed that when we hit that, it solves these kinds of problems.
Mhm.
And what's happened is because you have grown and the business has grown as you've gotten to that level, whatever that
Mhm.
level is, what we don't realize is it did solve those problems that you had back then when you
Mhm.
thought this level would solve those problems,
Right.
right? But now the problems have taken on a slightly different flavor,
Mhm.
right? But we keep associating them with the problem that we had back then.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, so it's not actually the same problem. It kind of smells like the same problem, kind of tastes like the same problem, kind of feels like the same problem, but it's not actually the same problem. It's really a
Mhm.
different problem. It's a bigger problem. It's a sideways problem. There's lots of other things that will go on with it. And so we get worried. It's like, oh, it's not solving that problem. It's like,
Mhm.
no, this actually is a different problem. I heard one of my mentors say this. It was on a completely different focus and topic. It was someone I knew when they were much earlier starting out and where they were much later starting out.
Mhm.
Her whole thing was like, "I feel like I just can't sell anything, and I'm not able to sell." Now I happen to know that this person knows how to sell.
Right.
And the thing was, and I love what she said, it's like, you feel like this is the same problem it was when you weren't able to put food on the table for the kids because you had just gotten divorced. You had a whole I mean, like, it was a whole thing, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, I'm out of money and I've got to figure out how to do this, right? This person is now selling $1,000,000 offers. I'm not even exaggerating.
Mhm.
Okay. And feeding the kids, so not in the
An
issue,
issue anymore, yeah.
right? Like, this is not the problem, but she was associating it in her mind with the same problem back then,
Right.
right? Because it feels like the same problem.
Mhm.
But selling $1,000,000 offer and selling a $5,000 offer is not the same problem.
Yeah. Well, and so what I'm hearing is, like, this is where that misalignment becomes intolerable,
Right.
and what you were saying is, they've outgrown their current structure, or, it feels like the same problem in a different dress, but really it is a different issue
It's a
because the
different problem.
business is different.
The business is different. The business model that she has now is so completely different than the business model that she had then. So the sales process is a completely different process. She's selling it to completely different kind of people. I mean, like, the list goes on and on and on, but
Mhm.
it feels like I'm not able to make this sale.
Yeah.
And that part is still true. The, you know,
Mm.
I'm struggling making the sale.
Yeah.
Okay, that part is actually the same. But all of the reasons why and whatnot are so
But
completely different.
maybe it's because it takes a little more time to sell a $100,000 offer than it does to sell a $1,000 offer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like,
Yeah.
there's all sorts of things, and that's the thing is we forget that where we are now, we actually aren't dealing with those problems
Right.
that we had before. We're dealing with different problems. Even like you said, even if they look like it's just a different dress.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's actually a different problem. And the opposite side of that is solving problems that we don't yet have.
Mhm.
I see that happen also, and
Yeah.
to me, it's kind of the same version on the opposite side. And
Mhm.
I've had a couple clients that we've talked to. It's like, okay, yeah, you're wanting to hire someone new, but you don't you aren't actually at capacity yet. I know you don't want to feel like you have to hire under pressure,
Mhm.
but we don't actually know when you're going to be at or exceed capacity.
Yeah.
If we're really sure it was gonna be in a week or 2, yeah, you probably need to hire, but we don't know that. It could be
Mhm.
3 months, could be 6 months, but yet it could be a year because there's some
Yeah.
other things that we could be looking at that could be addressing this. And so sometimes, and you know very well that I've been guilty of the same thing. Of I'm going to hire for where I think I am going to be,
Right.
right? Which we get a little too far ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that's
And
another reason that we can feel this pressure is that we're actually trying to run the business of the future
mhm.
as opposed to the business that we have today.
Yeah. So, for the listener who is going, "Huh, okay, some of this actually does make sense. I am trying to solve the same problem over and over again, or I am, bringing in more money and it's never enough. It's not soothing the pain
Right.
that I think it should be soothing. You have our permission right now, mine and Gwen's both. I can get to speak for Gwen right now to stop trying to push through, right? Because it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better, right? Because it's time to look at the problem differently. Like, you've got to look somewhere else. There's got to be a different place to look. And if you are a normal human, thinking, breathing, walking about the world, successful in your business, it is entirely possible that the answer does not lie inside your brain. Because if you knew the answer, you'd do it already. Like, quite honestly, you just would. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, we're making more money, but something about this is not working the way that I think it should, maybe your thought process is wrong, or maybe it's an action item. But the only way to figure that out is to get some outside perspective. And I highly, highly would recommend that you get that outside perspective from Gwen, because you just heard her tell you about 15 different scenarios that might apply to you. But there's like 15 we didn't have time to talk about today. So go to everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity. You can book a 30-minute call with Gwen. Don't have to go through me. Don't have to go through a support, assistant or anything. It's directly with Gwen, not a sales call, just a conversation. But in that conversation, you're going to be able to figure out if there is anything you're overlooking. And if there's not, Gwen will validate that too. That's my favorite part about talking to Gwen about anything in my business, is she lets me know when I'm not on the wrong track too. So go to everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity and book that call with Gwen today. Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tonya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.